You might have seen this go by in news headlines, a report coming out of Microsoft on specific occupations that are most likely to have AI overlap. It's useful for us in arts and culture to look. It's a bit of a crystal ball for how we can shape our AI strategy. Hey everyone, Kristen Darrow, another update on AI for arts and culture. This time I want to loop back to a story that was from a couple of weeks ago. You might have seen this go by in news headlines, a report coming out of Microsoft on specific occupations that are most likely to have AI overlap. Said another way, occupations that are most at risk for AI takeover, right? Or least at risk. The report really focused on both ends of that spectrum of where generative AI overlaps most effectively and least effectively with various occupations. I spent some time reviewing the report, and I'm just going to share this with you to cover why I think it's significant and why I think it's useful for us in arts and culture to look. It's a bit of a crystal ball for how we can shape our AI strategy and think about this longer term. So I'm going to share this report out here. Okay, so you can see this came straight out of Microsoft research. What is unique about this was perhaps the first crack of a major AI paving type company looking at real generative AI usage across a large subset of data. And so what did they look at? They looked at 200,000 anonymized privacy scrub conversations between users and Microsoft Bing Copilots. And it was the publicly available version, which means it was free. So you have a lot of use cases there. It's not just behind some corporate paywall where you have very specific, business related use cases. It really was across a wide swath of humanity. And one of the first moments we've been able to look at this, how is GenAI actually getting used now that the generative AI tools are being used very prolifically across the globe? So what the abstract says is we find the most common work activities people seek AI assistance for involve gathering information and writing, while the most common activities AI itself is performing are providing information, assistance, writing, teaching, and advising. I don't think this is exactly a shock. I think this is how we're all using LLMs or large language models intuitively to begin with. And of course, you can ladder up complexity from there. But I think it's an interesting report for that reason, because what it does across these 200,000 sessions or conversations is, I'm going to just hop down to page 12 here. It ranks the top 40 occupations with the highest AI overlap or applicability score, they call it. So right here in this score column. So at the very top of the list of what jobs are most likely to have AI overlap that's effective, the top of the list with 0.49 or 49% overlap is interpreter and translator. Right underneath that, historian. Intuitively, it makes sense that interpreters and translators, it's a large language model. So one of the very first applicable use cases of AI is translating across languages. That's been trained in language. It's been trained in this exact thing. Similar with historians. If there is one job description for a historian, it is to write down for the sake of humanity what it is that you know across every culture, across all parts of the globe, and have done that throughout history. And of course, that's what AI was trained on, is the giant tome of human knowledge. So this makes total sense that these are like hand in glove for AI. If you think about arts and culture, there's a heck of a lot of translation and interpretation and historical knowledge context going on. So I think this is fairly important for us to note as we think about all the translations that we're doing and all of the cultural inferences and references that we're making as we're doing our program notes and signage and digital properties and all the translation that goes on there. So that's interesting. Now, another thing just to point out while we're at the very top of the list is that the top occupation overlap with AI was still under half of the job. So that is sort of the meta headline here, is that no one's job is completely impacted at this point by AI, which I think we all know. But I think that's the existential grit of where we are, is figuring out what jobs can be augmented by AI, helped by AI. If you're watching this video, certainly you're trying to figure that out in your own relevant situation. How should my job evolve? How can I be in the driver's seat about how my job evolves? And if that is where you are, thumbs up. I love that. In my opinion, that's exactly where we should be. But this is an interesting mile marker in terms of the rollout of AI. And of course, we're still in the very early days of what this is going to end up being implication-wise for humanity. Okay, scrolling on down here across other occupations, thinking about arts and culture, we've got writers and authors at 0.45 or 45% overlap. If you've been using any of these GenAI tools to create content, you know what Ethan Mollick calls that jagged edge. If it's a topic that you know well as a writer, you know where AI does a good job and where it doesn't. And it falls short in a lot of ways. Now, sometimes it can surprise you and be incredibly insightful. I'm still at that point where I often use AI to brainstorm and maybe honing an arc of a narrative, but I'm not using verbatim AI content. I want to make sure my fingerprints are on it and that I really am understanding what I'm putting out into the world. So I'm not automating this stuff in that way, but I am using AI as a preprocessor. I think that's the slippery slope we're all going to have to acclimate to, is the better these tools get, and they are just getting astonishingly better day by day. And without a doubt, I think the writing quality coming out of AI is going to be better and better and more tunable to your specific voice and style guide. But there's a whole bunch there around writing that we could talk about. And right underneath that, customer service representative, 0.44, up or 44% overlap. So obviously this is the chatbot inference, I think. And then look, here's ticket agent, 0.41 or 41%. So again, I think this is more about how much ticketing is now done online for many, many years now, but also probably has a lot to do with the chatbot, overlap with AI. Here's your public relations specialist at 36%. I don't know if you would agree with that or not. Then you go over to the IT department. You've got your data scientists at 36%. I'm not, yes, in some ways, absolutely. I think AI is doing a great job, but in other ways, certainly does a great job of pattern recognition and sort of picking up signals amid the noise. I'm not sure what you all would say about whether it's 36% of the data scientist job. Here's web developer at 35%. So coming down to the bottom of the list here, you've got the jobs least likely to be impacted by AI. Let's see, embalmers. I'm not even sure what 3% overlap would be with AI and embalming. But anyway, I'm going to move on down here. If you're moving heavy equipment across the planet, you've got pretty much a 0% chance of overlap with AI at this point, which is really comforting given that we are still figuring out autonomous vehicles. Okay, now I want to drill in on data that's more interesting in this report than this. To me, the data that's more across the bow and really brings it home is found on page 10. So this is an infographic of specific job functions. So in arts and culture and in nonprofits in general, we all can wear multiple hats. So it's really hard to just say, here is the job occupation category that you fall into. Sometimes it is easy and sometimes it isn't. I like to look at specific tasks and how effective AI actually is at accomplishing that task. So that's what all these red and blue little Star Wars battleships are over here. So over here you see in red the user goal, the thing that was asked of the AI by the human, and blue is how well the AI overlapped in terms of what it delivered. And also there's an x-axis vector involved. So down here you've got the feedback positive fraction. That's very intuitive, right? What it means is that if it's 0.5, that means that it's a 50-50 thumbs up or thumbs down around how effective it was. So let's start at the very bottom at a literal meh, like a 50-50, it was effective, it wasn't effective thing. Create visual designs or displays. So here's something that is definitely in the arts and culture space. It's Microsoft, so it doesn't drill in on specifically what this means. Is this art on a gallery wall, or is it marketing art? Both are art, but let's just take it at face value. And it looks like what was asked of AI with the little red battleship down here and then the blue overlap with AI on that particular task was pretty overlapped. So what you asked for, you sort of got, but it wasn't actually very useful. And that makes total sense. Intuitively, that is exactly what I'm finding with image generation within AI and design generation. It might be a good first stab. And as we've seen others in arts and culture talk about, it's a really good way to mock up for your production team, what you're trying to get at with a video production or with maybe an artistic direction, but it's not good enough to really go production with, right? So I think that makes sense. So let's go up to the top here. The second one here, which is interpret language, cultural information for others. This is something we do in arts and culture all the time, right? And this is the second little cluster. So red is what the user asked for and blue is what AI gave, and it's pretty overlapping. And what's most significant is it's in the positive territory. So it's more hitting like 70%, not bad, like that's a thumbs up, So I think again, that goes to the occupational list we just looked at, where translation and historical inference are pretty much at the top of the list in terms of where AI is actually hitting the mark. So in arts and culture, leveraging generative AI for your translation and for some of your cultural research makes a ton of sense. Provide support and encouragement to others. So this gets sort of in the customer service direction. What I'm noting here is what the user asked for over here and what was delivered is somewhat way back toward meh, and it's not overlapping very well. Probably denotes that you can use AI to generate some research, but delivering actual support through humanity might be the best approach right now with AI. Plan work activities, if you look at the overlap, pretty overlapped and in the positive territory. So I think about a symphony orchestra going on an international tour. There's a ton of logistics to map out and line up. Generative AI is sort of proving itself out in that way in terms of a research tool for logistical things. That's one idea that comes to mind. And obviously editing written materials and documents, it's in the positive territory. Good overlap between what was asked for and what was delivered. Back to that occupational list, the writers are definitely feeling like, okay, but again, probably not using this for production ready content. Now, one caveat to that, your organizations are big enough and you have enough written material in your voice as an organization and your brand that we actually can get much closer than I could get as an independent consultant. But a major opera company or a museum or a small theater company that's been around for a while, you have a lot of written content in your voice. That really helps us train generative AI to be able to create with a crisp style guide in the instructions to the AI to be able to start to say, okay, like here's what social media posts look like coming from our theater. Here is what press releases look like coming from our opera company, and start to be able to use this much more in sort of an automated way with enough training and work. So that's an important note. And then of course, here's the whole upsetting of the apple cart for search engine optimization. When people are searching for, what should I do tonight? I'm at 82nd and Broadway. You would probably get pretty mixed results from Google, not very helpful. But with AI, that's increasingly what people are asking. And so what is search engine optimization these days? Whether or not AI returns a native link back to your website to drive traffic to your site is a giant question mark right now. So advising others on products and services, you can see what was asked for that is, humans are hoping it's over here, AI is over here in terms of what it's delivering. But yet, you probably have had this experience as well, just looking for, I don't know, the other day I was looking for LED light bulbs. I started doing some research using AI, and it led me down a track, and I ended up buying those light bulbs. Again, end of the SEO world in a lot of ways, or a change of how that happens. And so interesting to note, it's more in the positive territory, maybe because AI leads you down a research track for what to purchase in terms of tickets or experiences. But it's still not overlapping very well with what was actually delivered. It falls short on what it's delivered. And researching historical or social issues, it's a good overlap and it's generally in the positive territory. And here we go, write material for artistic purposes. Pretty much overlap between what was asked and received. And again, more on the positive side. So I thought it was worth calling out because this list that I just showed you really talks about individual skills and job functions, of course, which we are mixing and matching in various titles in our organizations. But maybe this gives all of us some data about what GenAI is actually hitting the mark doing today and what it's not quite doing as well. Getting out of the hype cycle into some data, which is great. That's it. If I can help in any way, I help arts and culture organizations figure out the best use cases for AI in your organization, what can help you on the operational efficiency side, what can help you achieve your strategic goals, and what can help with your customer experience end to end. It's not just about digital or the traditional digital boundaries. It really is about end-to-end customer experience. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at kristendarrow.com/connect or reach out on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you.